Mr. Travis Croft, how are you, sir?
I'm fine and dandy, and good evening to all those poor people who've chosen to join us either live or in the podcast later on. You have my commiserations.
Hey, we are a professional time-wasting podcast.
We are, and we waste time in large chunks.
Yes, we know how to waste it better than anyone. Now, this is episode 150 of Armchair Producers.
Wow, yeah, we should have had like a celebration or something. This is how professional we were. I didn't realize that until this second.
A century and a half of episodes.
And that doesn't count the old ones.
No, I think
the G&T podcast.
I think we got to like 70 odd with the G&T podcast, so we're over 200 officially.
You'd expect better from someone who's been doing it this long. You really, really would. But here we are. What can I say?
Hey, we do this on the smell of an oily rag.
Very much so. This is done out of love and desperation.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you have chosen for us this week. I think we have an interesting chain film this week. We've been watching Blowout.
Yeah, so we followed on from last week's Carrie with the great director Brian De Palma to another collaboration between John Travolta and Nancy Allen. Yes, thank you. With the classic and apparently one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies, Blowout. I will pick where we go next for that. We both checked out the new Netflix movie starring Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller called Spiderhead. I'm guessing we've got episode 3 of the Trek Respective.
We most certainly do.
Excellent. Is what the people are asking for. I have watched the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I will not go into spoilers per se because it only came out today and that's not given many people a chance to see it, but I will give general thoughts. The new episode of Ms. Marvel. Travis has checked out The Offer, which I believe is the kind of making of story behind The Godfather.
Recommended by one of our viewers a couple of weeks ago.
That's true. And I'm presuming it's the palate cleanser.
It'll be a surprise. There's a surprise entry for later on in the second half of the show. I'm going to keep people waiting to hear about it. And yes, the end of that sentence that George was about to deliver was yes, it was this week's palate cleanser.
I figured that was the case.
Unfortunately, I'll give you this hint. It wasn't Rocky IV. Like in one of those great snafus where you're going around looking at things you can stream. And you look at the movie, you're looking at Prime, and you go, oh, there's Rocky IV. It's on Prime. I can watch it on Prime.
In America?
And then when you go to look at it on Prime, it's like, join here for a free trial of MGM's online streaming. I didn't even know they had one. Didn't even know MGM had a streaming service.
What do they even have? Because Prime have already got Bond. What else do MGM have?
Don't know, but they wanted me to sign up for a free trial that was going to be like $5 a week, which I know it isn't much, but like, you know what it is? Like, you sign up for one of these free trials for a week. There's no bloody way I'm going to remember to go back and cancel it later on. I'll guarantee I'll forget it.
Yeah,
I'll end up paying six
That's
months
what
later.
they anticipate. That's how they make their money.
I get 6 months later, I'm like, I'm paying for MGM? Like, what the fuck? And like, then you pay like, $50 or something, and like, no, thank you. Not paying extra, Mr. Bezos. So unfortunately, we didn't make Rocky IV as the palate cleanser, but all will be revealed in the second half. So stick around for that.
Yeah. So let's get straight on into it, and let's talk about our chain movie of the week, which Travis you talked about. So introduce our
Blowout.
darling.
From 1981, a movie sound recordist accidentally records the evidence that proves that a car accident was actually murder and consequently finds himself in danger. As you noted, our link from last week is the director and writer, Brian De Palma, starring John Travolta, Nancy Allen, John Lithgow, and Dennis Franz. Remember Dennis Franz? He was famous.
He was one of those faces that was just everywhere for a while.
For about 5 minutes, because of NYPD Blue. And then apparently, you look him up, he retired about 15 years ago and does nothing now. Like, I mean, I guess he lives on residuals. Like, whatever. Yeah. Good luck to you. And those are probably your familiar faces, those four. As you hinted earlier, this apparently is one. I didn't know this, but this is one of Tarantino. I believe, apparently his favorite Brian De Palma film, and is apparently the film of a role that made him think to hire John Travolta for Pulp Fiction. So that's quite an auspicious little
Yeah.
feather in this film's cap.
Yeah.
The longer storyline, the stylish Brian De Palma thriller, plays off the theme of the unsuspecting witness who discovers a crime and is thereby put in grave danger, but with a novel twist. Jack Terry, John Travolta, is a master audio technician who makes his living by recording unique sounds for grade B horror movies. Late one night, he's recording sounds for use in his movies, and he hears something unexpected through the sound equipment and records it. Curiosity gets the better of him when the media become involved, and he begins to unravel the pieces of a nefarious conspiracy as he struggles to survive against his shadow enemies and expose the truth. He does not know whom he can trust. This is a hidden gem.
It is. It definitely is. Interestingly enough, it's actually a remake. It's one of the few kind of remakes that stands on its own. I'm thinking of The Thing as another similar example, but this was based off of Blow Up from 1966.
Which, believe it or not, I've actually seen. Which is interesting because if you look at the credits here, there's no credited writer apart from Brian De Palma and Bill Neese Jr. So you're right. As soon as I read the description of this, I'm like, that sounds a hell of a lot like Blow Up by Antonioni, Michelangelo Antonioni. I watched it for cinema studies back in 1996. So I was like, but is it a remake? Because they don't credit Antonioni or anyone from the previous film as a writer of this, but it is a direct ripoff of that film.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They've simply transplanted the notion of a picture capturing the murder to audio, which I think is a rather interesting and compelling twist on the story. But the thing that really a lot of reviewers, I read some reviews or is it like delayed reviews on Blowout, and a lot of people are kind of saying it's very Hitchcockian. And yeah, definitely.
Yes,
the way that it's filmed, the way that the story progresses, everything about it, it feels very much like your quintessential Hitchcock as well. So it's an interesting one that it's like, all right, I would have thought that there would have been based upon an idea of Blow Up and inspired by, but maybe that this was in a time when maybe that wasn't exactly a thing.
I guess. I mean, I would. Yeah, it's curious. It really is. So, I mean, Blow Up was released in 1966. It's a British film, I think. The director was Italian. Stars David Hemmings and Vanessa Redgrave. And apparently, there are three, and that's based on a short story. But we've got two writers in that film, Antonioni and a guy named Tony Guerra. It's a strange film, Blow Up. It's a very strange film. Not as straight ahead as Blow Out is. But it is. I was curious. I'm like, I don't see any acknowledgement of the previous film anywhere on this film. So maybe they just bought the rights wholesale, and that doesn't mean they don't have to. I thought SAG rules said they did, or like the New Writers Guild would insist on it being listed that way, but don't know. But this is a hidden little classic. Like, I've never even heard of this film. And the only reason I heard about this film is because Michelle and I were talking about a John Travolta film she couldn't remember from the early 80s the other week, which turned out to be Saturday Night Fever.
Okay.
It's a sequel to Staying Alive. Sorry, Staying Alive. It's the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And
which is directed by Sylvester Stallone.
It's gloriously random. You have the key, sir. That could be next week's film. We don't know. We just don't know.
I'm not doing it. I'm not putting this through that one.
But once I saw it by De Palma, I thought this is going to be a nice link in the chain. I found it really, really nice. The film opens in a really excellent little sequence of basically a film opens like a slasher film. We're following a slasher stalking a bunch of sorority girls, in a sorority house, funnily enough, and murdering, police officer and killing people like slasher would. And you're like, okay, I know what you're doing here, but like you could be forgiven thinking I didn't watch a slasher film.
Exactly.
But it's just an intro to the movie that Jack is working on currently for the sound for. And it's actually, I love the setup's so beautiful, a relationship between him and the director of a film, and the conversation and the banter between the two of them. It feels very natural. It's beautifully written from the get-go. As we move forward, we Jackie's out and about, as it sort of notes in the synopsis there. The director's really unhappy that he keeps using library sounds for his movies. I've heard that sound a million times. So he's out and about in the park recording audio that's to replace those sounds. When he notices a car go flying off the road into a creek, he dives into the water and has managed to save one person from a car, a woman, Nancy Allen's Sally, but the driver of a car he is unable to save.
Now, it's in this opening sequence where John Travolta is kind of filming specific noises and things as he hears. We start to really see a lot of the Brian De Palma directorial production side of it, with the dueling focus inspired by Sergio Leone.
We saw a little bit of it last week in Carrie, where a couple of moments we have like split screen and different panels, and I think there was a lot more of it
focused on those specific elements, and he plays with it throughout the whole film, and it is one of Brian De Palma's kind of signature moves to this day now. And it was really nice how he introduced that in this movie as a storytelling device, with Jack just kind of highlighting what that noise is and things like that. It worked really, really well. It just cranked up that level of isolation that Travolta's character kind of lives in and experiences throughout the whole film. And the something that I noticed about the movie is it does kind of feel like throughout the movie, but when we first enter it, it's him watching this movie and hearing the terrible scream and him having this one-on-one conversation. And as the story goes on, it literally gets louder and louder and louder until the very end, and how it ends for him as a character just being all too much. I loved that as a crescendo piece. It's fantastic.
The sound design was fantastic in this film, right? For a film from the early 80s. I don't think it actually got nominated for any awards. It doesn't look like it did, which is a bit of a shame, really, because it looks like it really sank beneath the waves, this film. Nancy Allen is, what would you call her? She's not a prostitute. She is a nefarious. She's involved. I guess she's in this for nefarious purposes initially, at least. The person she's in the car with, it turns out, was a high-profile politician who was in line or a favorite to be the next U.S. president.
Yeah.
And we later find out that initially at least, the police and his political political staff are like telling John Travolta, don't pretend she wasn't in the car, don't say anything. And there's some echoes in here of Chappaquiddick. Ted Kennedy, if you don't know the story, Ted Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's youngest brother. There's a lot of Kennedys out there. I can't be expected to remember them all. One of their brothers, but one who wasn't shot, drove a car off a bridge in Chappaquiddick, which is, I think, in Massachusetts, with a girl in the car who wasn't his wife. He may or may not have been drunk at the time, and she definitely did die while she's in the car. And it's one of those great American political scandals that kind of took a giant chunk out of his political career.
Yeah.
But, a famous, charismatic politician in the car with a girl who's not his wife, and he crashes into a river. That's not by accident, right? That's
not at all.
That's definite reference to what the real life. We later find out that Nancy Allen's character is. By the way, it's a 40-year-old film, so I assume spoilers are okay. She's actually trying to extort the politician by having should we say, scandalous photos or photos taken of them in flagrante by her husband, who is played, or husband, partner, boyfriend, pimp, combination of the above.
Yeah,
choose any combination you like. Dennis Franz, who actually plays a really good sleazeball.
Yeah, he does.
And he turns out he actually ends up selling. He's taking photographs of a car crash. He ends up selling to like the National Enquirer version of in the film.
Yeah.
You believe he was 38 in this film?
Holy shit.
You know,
Was
you
he
look at
ever
it.
young?
It's like Strickland. Jesus, didn't that guy ever have hair?
Yeah. Like
He's-
him, Donald Pleasance, and Hulk Hogan, they were born 45.
you just sort of look at him and go, he looks the same as he did 10 years later when he did
Yeah.
NYPD Blue.
Yeah.
But
He's
he's
just
38.
a plastic person. He's not real.
But FYI, NYPD Blue was the last acting credit for Dennis Franz in 2005. So for someone who was like a big star for 5 minutes, like I said, he just kind of walked away from it all bit. So if you start to spiral down and you get deeper and deeper into this conspiracy, we meet John Lithgow's Burke in a very strange turn for someone like John Lithgow.
Well, yes and no. I mean, he was largely credited as being one of, if not the best villain in the Dexter series.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
And this is quite evocative of that. And he's like he is really good at being a sadistic bastard. And I'm thinking of his character BZ in the Santa Claus movie with Dudley Moore.
Actually, now that I think about it, he was the bad guy in Cliffhanger, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
And of course, he played the king or a prince in Shrek. You know,
Yes.
Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I am prepared to make.
Yes. So he's kind of.
I guess instantly I just sort of associate him with like
Third Rock from
the Sun being kind of like, but he did so many other things, but that's the first thing I think of with him. But you're right.
So it's not in the grand scheme of his career, I don't think it's an unusual turn, but what does kind of twist it and make it unique is the intelligence and the pragmatism that goes into it. He is not a he thinks his villains through entirely, and whether he just picks roles and productions where it is a very fully realized villain modus operandi, or he develops that himself. He always does well with this. Like the brief conversations that we overhear of him on the phone with the people that have employed him and stuff, is like, oh yeah, this was going back to the meeting that we had on the 19th. This is a better outcome for everyone, and it's very, very pragmatic. And it's almost like he's a black ops CIA agent who's just kind of sort of gone rogue, but at the same time not really. He's just going above and beyond the paradigms of his job. But then,
interestingly, it says in the trivia here he based his character on G. Gordon Liddy. I am going to put my American history hat on again. And G. Gordon Liddy was one of the Watergate burglars. I think the lead Watergate burglar. So I don't quote. Leader of the White House plumbers became central players in the Watergate scandal. Don't quote me. I'm not a little bit before my time, but I think he was a CIA guy. So, FBI agent, the internets tell me. So, probably a good one to model yourself after. But I liked I actually really enjoyed his character. He didn't have a lot of backstory. He just sort of turned up doing scary, nefarious things like erasing all of John Travolta's tapes. I'm like, oh, isn't that cute? Remember when we used tapes?
Yeah.
Or like my old MP3 recorder thing I used to have, where I just forget to press play and record. So, but like, I was thinking to myself, it'd be interesting to even try a remake, but how would you couldn't do it quite as easily because there'd be USB sticks and SD cards and cloud storage. And
I mean, ask any politician. It's really hard to get rid of photos off the internet.
He erases John Travolta's tapes. While kind of stalking him, he attempts to kidnap Sally from a bus stop, which I found a strange scene, by the way. Like, you can just roll up to a bus stop, grab a woman, and drag her off in Philadelphia, and no one bats a fucking eyelid. Philadelphia, it's a city of brotherly love for you, but if you're a sister, you're fucked. But it turns out when they fall down a hill, or he's trying to get kidnap this woman, and it turns out it's not Sally. So he actually makes it look like a murder. Well, it was a murder, but like a sex murder, I think he called it. Like he
Yeah,
actually
he's sex
enacted, like he tried to turn it into something
a
it
serial
wasn't,
killer kind of thing. Yeah.
to sort of put the cops off a scent. Like he stabs her in the pattern of the Liberty Bell or something like that, and
Mm,
then you see him in a later scene calling up, I guess it's the police department, using a silly voice,
mhm.
confessing to the murder and telling them where to find the body and saying he'll do it again, and
Yeah.
like almost Zodiac killer esque.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, wow, he's actually a pretty impressive guy. Like
Mhm,
but you do kind of question the the final sequence where he kidnaps Sally.
mm.
Again, very cleverly done from his villain's perspective. But um, initially, I was finding myself thinking, this is kind of stupid. Sally surely isn't that dumb, but she is quite wide-eyed, don't you think?
Yeah, she is really very much presented as at the very least, highly naive.
For someone involved in
Mm,
basically blackmailing politicians by
mhm,
having nudie photos taken with them,
mm.
that is a strange character quirk, but I kind of
Yeah.
liked it.
Yeah, it kind of worked, and I don't think you needed more, really. I don't think it needed more because in every scene that she's in, she is presented in that same way, and Nancy Allen does such a good job of just exhibiting and in filling that role. She's a completely different character to what she was last week when we saw her in Carrie. It's a completely different personality, and you just believe it.
And she's a
It's
completely different personality again to her most famous role
mm,
in RoboCop.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And she does it with such deftness and sincerity that it's just like, okay, well, this person, it, I think it's purposefully done that we never really know kind of what the true relationship is between her and her partner and whether she is actually a cool girl or anything else, because it seems like she's just someone who this confident guy comes forward and says, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to make money, and this is how we're going to do it. She's like, okay, cool, I like money, cool, because she slowly kind of adopts that kind of not necessarily hero worship, but what you say I will do kind of attitude with Jack
It's
as
almost
he
like she hooks onto people. Like
mm,
I wouldn't call her a pathetic figure. She's certainly not that.
no
But she is I want to say frail, but it's not quite the right word. But she's not a substantial character in herself, in the sense that
mm,
she sort of strikes me as the kind of character who needs a strong figure to leech
mm,
onto or latch onto and to sort of guide. She's a follower.
mm.
She's not a
Yeah.
leader. She's not like you think of a plucky police member that she was in RoboCop. Like
Mhm,
she's kind of got her own. She does her own thing. She won't be
mm,
told anything necessarily.
mm,
Whereas this one is very much like she sort of initially she's like latched onto Dennis Franz's
mhm,
Manny as like
mm,
he's the provider, and then she's sort of latching onto Jack as kind of her protector. And then
mm,
almost at the end, when Burke, John Lithgow,
mm.
kidnaps her,
Yeah.
he's pretending to be a well-known
Orwell or
newscaster,
something?
and she almost latches onto him, thinking he's the newscaster, he's a famous person, so he'll
Yeah.
look after me, kind of thing. And her naivete and willingness to believe in the best of people,
Mm.
it's kind of charming somehow.
Yeah,
It's probably the
it's
least
charming.
cynical part of a very cynical movie.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It doesn't present 1980 odd Philadelphia in any way of kind of hope or optimism, really. It's kind of a presentation that you generally kind of associate with the darker side of New York or Chicago or somewhere like that, where it's sort of like, oh, you either fuck someone up or they fuck you up.
It's almost you could almost imagine. I haven't seen it written anywhere, so this is not me saying was an inspiration. But you could almost imagine this film was inspired by something like Taxi Driver.
That's fair.
Just the cynical,
Mm.
jungle-like nature of a city.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed when watching this movie is I would be surprised if you talk to Dan Gilroy, writer and director of Nightcrawler, and if he doesn't mention Blowout as an inspiration, holy shit, because there's a lot of kind of tonal similarity to it. And particularly, I notice very strong similarities between Jake Gyllenhaal's character in that movie, Lewis, and John Travolta's Jack. They even kind of look kind of similar, but whereas Jake Gyllenhaal's Louis is much more out for himself, John Travolta's Jack is a wounded angel, I guess you could say, considering what we learn about him having been in the police force and him still carrying the burden of regret for a mistake that wasn't really his. It was just a technical issue that caused the problem and caused the death. But the stylism of Nightcrawler just really rung out to me. So like, holy shit, yeah.
I must say, I found that a very overrated film, but I can see your point. You're right, but I think I don't quite see the same as closeness between Gyllenhaal. I always thought Gyllenhaal might have more in common with Burke, frankly. Gyllenhaal struck me as a psychopath in that film.
Yeah, he's good, man. I just meant literally.
Yeah, so there's some.
He looked a bit like a young John Travolta.
You bring up a good point. What I enjoyed particularly, one of the other things I particularly enjoyed about this film, I enjoyed many things, was that I kind of feel like they wouldn't care to go as deep today or often, even in the past. Like a lesser filmmaker wouldn't have gone as deep into his characters. He wouldn't have got as much character behind him. I don't think we would have got that police subplot about John Travolta, maybe from a lesser filmmaker and a lesser writer. Might have just gone, he's a sound recordist. He works in movies. Do you need to know more?
Yeah.
That's enough, right? Like, we know he's an audio expert. He can fuck around with tapes and figure out, he works in films. He can reanimate the photos used in a newspaper and sync it up to his audio and find out, actually, it wasn't an accident. Somebody shot the tire out.
Yeah.
But just that extra, we don't get a lot of that police subplot. It's, one sort of 5-minute conversation, and it kind of adds so much depth to John Travolta's character, and it explains some other parts of the films as well, where the police are quite hostile towards him. Exactly. In a lesser thriller, you might just go, "Oh, they're corrupt," which is kind of boring. We've seen corrupt police a lot, but they're not necessarily. Well, they are probably corrupt, but they just fucking don't like this guy because he's a rat.
Yeah.
You know what it reminded me of was that scene in Jaws, where they're all sitting around a table and Robert Shaw tells a story about the USS Indianapolis and the sharks and, all that kind of thing. It's like, it seems like it really doesn't actually add anything to the storyline, right? Yes, it's about sharks, but would there be, we already know he's a shark expert. He hunts sharks, but that
it just informs on the character.
Depth to his character about why he is the way he is. Why does he hunt sharks? Do we really need to know why he hunts sharks? Don't really, but that's what elevates Jaws beyond just a regular run-of-the-mill monster film, for want of a better term, to something truly spectacular. And I think the little bits like this elevate this beyond your standard run-of-the-mill Hitchcock ripoff.
Absolutely agree. And we've talked about a lot of bits, but let's talk about John Travolta as Jack in this, because this movie hangs on him, and he does really well with this.
People forget, and this is what I think Hollywood forgot. The guy can act. He did some, obviously Grease. Was that before or after this? I think it was before this.
Oh, I can't
remember. But he hadn't done. This is very early in his career. He was probably at this point in time in his career best known.
This was after Grease.
He would have been best known probably for Grease, which was maybe a couple of years before this.
78, so only 3 years.
So Saturday Night Fever and Grease were probably what he was best known for. And before that, it would definitely have been Welcome Back, Kotter, which was a TV comedy, a really shitty one, by the way, in case you've never seen it. I mean, some people might have remembered him from Carrie, but it was a pretty small role in Carrie. So Saturday Night Fever and Grease were, at least I know Saturday Night Fever was a big hit. I assume Grease was a big hit at the time as well.
I presume so.
Yeah, but sometimes like you see films like if you were look at a film like Labyrinth, for example. If you're a Gen Z, you might and you come across Labyrinth, the way Gen Xers talk about it, you might imagine it must have been a really big hit at the time. It must have been a big deal that people are still talking about it almost 40 years later. It wasn't a hit; it was a complete flop.
Yeah.
At the box office, but it just sort of grew on box office. Sorry, I'm going off topic, which never happens.
No, that's okay.
But like, I'm assuming Grease was big at the time, and it just didn't become one of those things that was on TV 400 million times and people loved it. But so you're talking basically musicals, musical comedies, musical dramas, or romantic musicals are kind of the thing he was best known for at this point in time in his career. Really, Welcome Back, Kotter only ended in 1979. So to actually cast someone like Travolta in a very serious thriller would have been, I mean, obviously he would have been bankable because his name was out there, so that's probably what did it, but it would have been an interesting choice. It's a little bit like casting Hugh Jackman as Wolverine all those years ago, because he was best known for musical comedy at the time. He certainly didn't have the hits that Travolta did, but a bit of a risk, a bit of an unknown. I remember when Keanu Reeves got cast in Speed, and everyone was like, "Whoa, hang on a second! Like, isn't this guy mainly do comedy? You know, he was Bill and Ted. It's you know."
And even looking at Travolta's career after this, he did Staying Alive, which was a flop. He did a bunch of stuff with Olivia Newton-John. He did the movie Perfect.
Look Who's Talking is probably the next hit.
Yeah, and then Look Who's Talking.
Yeah, that's 8 years after this.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're probably going through to Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
5 years after that. I'm not including the sequels to Look Who's Talking.
No.
So it's I guess it's understandable in the sense he had a lot of flops in there.
Yeah.
But it's I'm a Tarantino fanboy here, but it is just so like him to go, yes, I love that film you were in 40, 30, 15 years ago. You know, like but he's the kind of guy who seems to understand that a great performance like that doesn't come out of thin air. You know, that comes out of being the right director with the right material, working with the right actor. And Quentin, again, I am a fanboy, but nobody can deny he's a genius in getting incredible performances out of actors. Like, the amount of people who've won Academy Awards working with him, I think demonstrates that. And he revives and creates careers. John Travolta, Samuel Jackson owes a fair bit to his career to him. It was the guy who won for Jackie Brown. I can't remember his name, but he won an Academy Award or was nominated at least. Robert Forster.
Yeah, Robert Forster.
No one had heard of Christoph Waltz before Inglourious Basterds.
To their detriment, because he's a very well-established European actor, but still brought him into the mainstream for sure.
So I think that's maybe, I'm guessing, I don't know Quentin. I'd love to meet you, Quentin, but he lives in Israel now, so there's always that. But like, it seems to be about what he does. He goes, no, he was amazing in that. I know he could be amazing again if he gets the right material. And he seems to have this innate ability to go, this role, this actor.
Yep.
And I can see exactly what he was. And you have a good thing for him, I guess, as well. He was probably cheap.
Yeah. At that point, yeah. But bringing it back to Blowout, this is a great nuanced performance that, as we alluded to going through his career, he'd not really done anything, certainly not to this depth of character in anything else. It was about okay, we are selling this movie on your showmanship. So you got to dance, you got to sing, you got to look pretty. And in this one, he's a handsome man, but it's all about him being a bit of an odd duck and just being put in this increasingly escalating scenario where he is kind of permanently out of his depth in every way, but just has that heart of gold that's trying to drive him forwards to save the girl.
What did you make of the end? I was a bit taken aback by, so super spoiler here. If you genuinely think this film looks amazing, and it is, and you don't want to know anymore, skip ahead 10 minutes from now or put us on mute. Okay. So Sally dies at the hands of Burke in the final confrontation. In doing so, during that confrontation, Jackie's able to kill Burke as well. Apparently, with very little repercussion, but that's what happens when you catch someone killing somebody, I guess. But he's able to because Sally is wired because she's wired at the time. He's able to record her final scream as she's being attacked by Burke. He then uses that. We come right back around to the start of a film where we have a slasher movie where he was deeply unsatisfied with the girl in the shower's scream. So he subs in Sally's death scream into his B-grade horror picture.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. It's a tasteless way to end the film.
So it's part of the legend of the rule of three of comedy. And, the movie opens up with that pathetic scream and then laughing about it and joking and saying it because it's just this kind of stupid, like no one would scream like that kind of scream. And then in the middle of the film, he's still being hounded about this. And we get a shot where there's two women in a sound booth pulling each other's hair, still trying to get this scream. And then finally the scream is delivered because it's real. It's a real scream. It's a real death scream. And I kind of get it in a narrative.
I get the structure of a joke, but at the film's not a comedy. We're not laughing very much throughout the film.
Yeah, and it's an odd twist on that rule. Like I've been listening to Neil Gaiman talking about on his masterclass, and he likened it to something that Terry Pratchett, the author, used to do, where it's called having a sherbet lemon. And every now and then you find it, and it's kind of tangy and sweet, and it just randomly pops up, and it's just this odd thing that appears in your story. But you have to pay it off at the end. You have to give them a reward, and it's a weird kind of ideology of having that mentality here, but it's going, okay, instead of it being a joke, we are going to twist it to be the most torturous thing. Like, okay, that's interesting, but if you want us to empathize with Jack, why would Jack willingly put that in the movie?
And it seems very exploitative.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with the way he responds to it, where he's hearing it, because if he didn't want to hear it again, he wouldn't have put it in a fucking movie. So it's a weird choice that it creates a really dark, bleak, arguably brilliant end. And like I was talking about at the start with the crescendo of the noise and the fact that he is, when he's on the bridge filming the sound, he's got a smile on his face. He's happy. He's just enjoying it. He's at peace. And now at a position where intimate sound like that causes him pain. That's a beautiful arc for him to be on, but it's still it's a betrayal of his character.
It doesn't quite fit, does it? It doesn't destroy the film. It doesn't really ruin my enjoyment of it. I just found that a very odd choice at the end of a film.
Yeah.
If you were making this as some sort of comedy, if it was like an action comedy, like a Hudson or Hawk-esque caper, then that might, maybe a less obscure reference, a Knives Out style caper, then maybe that would work. But it's out of character.
It's still sort of like, oh fuck, what the shit? And maybe no, it's the more I think about it, the more of it's a betrayal of the character that is Jack that we have been shown and we have seen. And even if they were to kind of tack on a bit at the end where a corrupt CIA official or something knows that that's the sound, and they arrest him trying to use it as a cover-up or something like that, it still wouldn't fit because he is the one who had that tape. He's the only one who could have used it in the movie. It just betrays that character.
Anyway, didn't hurt me. Didn't hurt the film. It was
No.
just strange.
Yeah.
I'm actually. I mean, it's my choice, but I'm very glad I chose it because
Mhm.
it was actually a very enjoyable for a Monday morning for me. It was quite a pleasure. After some of the
Mm.
shit I had to watch in the weekend, you'll hear about a little later on. It was a real. I love it when we get these little finds. I think we had it again
Yeah.
a while ago when we watched Thief, the James
Yeah.
Caan. That was a
Yeah.
real one that I'd never seen before, but you never hear about. No one talks
Nope.
about it.
Nope.
But it was well worth our time.
Mhm.
And I'm very excited to hear about where you take us next.
Well, we are going to follow John Travolta because why not? And I am in control of this car. And we're going to go to 1996. We are going to go to an action adventure thriller, as IMDb says. This is the John Travolta, Christian Slater, Samantha Mathis, and Delroy Lindo starring Broken Arrow, directed by John Woo. Yes.
Oh, no. This
We've,
is a really bad movie.
Exactly. We have spoiled ourselves with some classics recently. And I think it's time to go back and just see John Woo is a legendary action director. So
This is where the rot set in for John Woo.
Huh?
This is almost when the rot started to set in. This is was Face Off, I think, was a year or so after this.
Yes. So that's part of why I'm kind of going this direction, because I'd like to see if maybe I can tempt you to go international, maybe one of his classic things like Hard Boiled or something like that.
I've seen some of that stuff. Believe it or not, I also saw it when I was studying social studies at university. And
there's a reason why they get you to watch them.
I've seen them. He didn't fuck around when he was making his movies in Hong Kong, that's for sure. It did not translate particularly well to Hollywood a lot of the time.
Most of the time.
From, say, Face Off. Face Off was
great.
Yeah.
But for those who are not initiated in the way of Broken Arrow, terrorists steal nuclear warheads from the US military, but don't count on a pilot and park ranger spoiling their plans. Yeah. If that isn't a B-movie plot, I don't know what is.
This movie's shit, but yeah. Anyway, as you said, we have been a little highbrow of late, so this direct is next. But look, maybe it's been about 25. It's obviously been. I think I saw this movie as part of a movie marathon in 1996, along with Courage Under Fire or an Independence Day or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's better not at 2 a.m.
I was tempted to go to Michael, but
I'm glad you didn't. That's also not good.
Exactly. There's reasons. But yeah, I just figured this one has got a nice few different directions that you can go with the actors involved, with the director as well. So I'll be interested to see where you go from there.
Very well.
Yes. Now you said that you said the phrase we've been doing highbrow. It's time to go lowbrow. Shall we switch and talk about Netflix's Spiderhead?
Let's. I randomly ran across this the other day. It was number 2 in the country. As the most watched things in the country. And I thought, I haven't even heard of it.
There's a reason why it wasn't heard of until now.
My theory is that Chris Hemsworth, outside of the role as Thor, has never done anything remotely memorable. I would argue the best non-Thor movie he's done would either be Ghostbusters 2016, and it's well known what I think of that Drek.
Yeah.
Or 2009 Star Trek, in which he's in it for 5 minutes.
Oh, sticking the knives into the Melbourne-born actor.
I like Chris as an actor. I think he's capable of more.
Yes.
But I think anything he's done outside of Marvel has been utterly forgettable. Maybe Bad Times at the El Royale. I don't remember him much about that, but
he was quite good in Rush as James Hunt. And
Cabin in the Woods. He was good in Cabin in the Woods, I guess.
Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, that was before he did. You're scraping through, right?
Yeah.
This film supports my theory.
That is very fair.
So, in the near future, convicts are offered the chance to volunteer as medical subjects to shorten their sentence. One such subject for a new drug capable of generating feelings of love begins questioning the reality of his emotions. This is based on a short story, Escape from Spiderhead, which appeared in The New Yorker. It is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who I think directed the new Top Gun film.
Correct.
He directed
This is
Oblivion.
exactly why this movie came out. Now, Maverick is getting all of the money, which Miles Teller also co-stars in, is directed by Joseph Kosinski, and we are less than a month away from the new Thor, which just so happens to star Chris Hemsworth. So this is Netflix cashing in.
A great cast is Chris Hemsworth, Miles Teller, Jurnee Smollett, who I know her name for some reason.
She really impressed me because she was in Lovecraft Country, and she was also in Harley Quinn and the Emancipation.
She was the Black Canary. That's right.
Yeah,
she was one of the few highlights of that film, along with a friend of the show, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I wish she was a friend of the show. We both enjoy her work.
Yes.
Brain Dead, I think, was the favorite. I will forget that Thing reboot she did.
Good. So good.
And I think we are forgetting the biggest name in this film by a stretch. Former WWE superstar and World Wrestling All-Stars champion Nathan Jones as Rogan.
I don't think we were accidentally forgetting him.
He was in Troy.
Yes.
He killed by Brad Pitt in the first 5 minutes. Anyway, so what did you make of this?
I thought that there was an interesting nugget of an idea here that clearly should never have been expanded beyond a short story. And it was weirdly all over the shop with its theme. Like, Chris Hemsworth is supposed to be almost, I feel like he kind of took a bit of inspiration for his role as like a combination of Steve Jobs, Tony Stark, and just an odd, charismatic weirdo.
I kind of feel he had the tech bro thing happening, like sort of channeling Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor meets Jesse Eisenberg's Mark Zuckerberg meets Steve Jobs.
Yeah, it's a weird medley, and it could have worked if this had been done as a comedy, because Chris Hemsworth actually has got good comedic timing. But this isn't, at least not the second half of the movie, because it feels like a movie of two halves. We are introduced to this notion, and it's definitely played for the lols, with sort of like, oh yes, he's going to be sitting in a room with an abrasive bitch who's beautiful, who any red-blooded man would want to fuck. It's just, unfortunately, you got to get past that attitude kind of thing, which is like, okay, don't know if that really flies in modern society, but let's see what you do with this. And then the polar opposite of that, where Miles Teller's character, what's his name in it? Jeff. He is put in the same room, and you know that it's going to be pushing the same thing, but then essentially the quintessential stereotypical looking crack whore comes in, and it's like, okay, yeah, I can see what this is going to be, and this is right. You're playing this for laughs, okay? And then the story evolves, and you've got the subtle romance that grows between Jeff and Lizzie, and you start to learn a little bit about Chris Hemsworth's Abnesty, which is just a stupid name anyway. And then it just keeps on just trying to twist it and twist it and twist it. And Joseph Kosinski, I'm sorry for anyone who loves his stuff, he is not a great director. Cinematography, he knows how to shoot something that looks beautiful. We reviewed for Chain Movie Only the Brave, again with Miles Teller in it.
Which was fine.
It was fine. It wasn't great. It was more of a compelling story because it was based on real events.
And Oblivion, it was fine.
It looked beautiful, but
it looked good.
The story was just fine. And Top Gun Maverick looks amazing, but it's probably going to be a very bland, stereotypical story overall.
Crossed 900 million worldwide today.
Yeah, biggest Tom Cruise movie to date, which just feels weird.
In my mind, I cannot imagine this film is as good as people say it is, but we will find out in time when I can see it for free.
I don't really want to give my money to it.
No, or at least cheap. I don't want to go to the cinema to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think much of his direction. And you make an excellent point. If you take a look at the writers here. So it's based on a short story by a guy who wrote it for the New Yorker. So probably fairly highfalutin as your standard New Yorker writers would be. And Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick are the writers, and they look like they work together quite a bit. And the films that they've been responsible for that are any good: Deadpool, Deadpool 2, Zombieland. These guys, I'm not going to mention the films that weren't any good, including G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Or Six Underground.
Terrible movies.
Yep.
Let's not forget the real highlight of the jewel in the crown of their career, Cruel Intentions 3. I bet you didn't know there was a Cruel Intentions 3. I didn't know there was a Cruel Intentions 3.
I choose my own reality, and therefore there is only one Cruel Intentions movie.
These are the kind of guys who write action comedies. So if you hire these guys and you've got this script and you've got Chris Hemsworth, there's not action comedy. You go, action comedy should be where we go, because like you got a whole bunch of ingredients here that say action comedy. But no, they played it straight. And at least partially straight. You're right. The first half, I mean, it's not straight laughs. It's kind of like, this is kind of funny in a kind of way.
Incidental comedy.
It's not actual gags. They're not paying off jokes. It's kind of amusing. It's lighthearted, I should say. And then you move into the second half, and we just have the heel turn from the tech bro. And by the way, he's far too pretty to be the tech bro. There's no tech bro on earth who is as pretty as Chris Hemsworth. I'm sorry. Give me Paul Giamatti or someone like that as a tech bro.
You're just profiling now, Trav.
If a tech bro as pretty as him, I don't know about it. So I don't buy that on one hand. I'm like, you're too pretty to be a tech bro. But then he kind of just goes full beast mode and goes, oh, I'm going to kill everybody, kind of thing, and just goes mental. And it's just like a real leap. And I kind of liked parts of his first half of the film for him in the sense, like, I mean, obviously, you and I have spent a great deal of time around tech billionaires. It happens when you're as high profile to show is.
There's a reason why we are the #1 trending Twitch program talking about Blowout
this week. But like most people don't get to spend time with the Bezoses and Zuckerbergs of the world, but like they don't. They strike me as a little bit like this sometimes. Like, I'm your mate, I'm your friend. I'm not trying to steal your data. I'm just a regular guy. Mark Zuckerberg, I'm just a regular human boy. Like I wear sweatshirts too. I'm just one of you. I'm a real person who just lucked out, created the thing that's destroying democracy.
The sex bot became sentient. Now it's disturbing.
So. I liked that about it. It was like he was just trying to ingratiate. I'm just one of you guys, the bosses. The bosses. The bosses say, I kind of liked how his character was doing that. But he sort of threw all that away in the second half and just went full mustache twirling evil.
Yeah, and we're kind of fed the line that it's because of his growing addiction to the drugs that he's experimenting on, but it's never properly cleared up. And at the same time, the amount of trouble that is caused by the housing of this thing, which it's probably about the size of like something like that, just strapped onto their back, and it's like this soft case. So like, really? That doesn't break every time someone sits down in a chair?
It breaks when the story needs them to break.
Yeah. Or, we're kind of shown that these people can't take them off, so they're sleeping with them on, and they don't break during sleep. What?
Don't question the plot elements.
I'm
just conscious we have a full show. I'm guessing then you didn't like this very much.
I mean, it's not the worst movie that Netflix have made. I mentioned Six Underground before.
The whole raft of Adam Sandler films we could mention.
Yeah, it's not a good film. It's not a bad film. It's just something that's there purposely to kind of grab people who are like, oh, I can't go to the cinema to see Top Gun. Oh, Joseph Kosinski did this, and it's only just coming out. Cool, I'll check it out. Chris Hemsworth, yeah, he's Thor. I remember that. I remember he has a career.
if you was a dictionary and was like, show me a Netflix movie, Siri, show me a Netflix movie, this would be it. Big stars, half a story, up and coming director, decent effects, something to put on the TV while you're checking your phone for an hour and a half. Like, that's kind of what this felt like to me. I know some people have said to me they really hated it and they thought it was awful. I don't know that I would say it was awful, but it really, really wasn't good. It was really just forgettable. And if this is what Netflix are going to put up, if this is their answer to Kenobi, to Marvel shows, to Game of Thrones on HBO Max, to Lord of the Rings on Amazon, if this is what they're going to throw up as an answer to that, they're in trouble. And to date, this is what they're throwing up.
Yeah. And frankly, their movies are either they believe in them and they will invest in them, such as Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, which got a lot of Oscar push a couple of years ago, The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, or their highbrow TV shows like House of Cards when that first came out, Stranger Things,
Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, Orange is the New Black. Otherwise, it's sort of like, yeah, sure, we'll give you 20 million, you make a movie, we'll put it out, see what happens. And that isn't doing them any good.
Look, I mean, on the surface, it might look like we get X number of streaming hours for cheap, because I don't know, this film probably didn't cost that much. But I think in the long run, it's damaging their brand. Like, you think about, like, we've got 5 streaming services to pick from now. I really like that new Yellow Jackets show on Paramount Plus. Like anyone subscribing to Paramount Plus, Apple TV or whatever. But, like, and you go, well, what have I seen on Netflix lately that's been good? I doubt this will come to mind.
Yeah, it's the only thing that people are talking about positively on Netflix right now is Stranger Things season 4, and you're still going to have to wait another week and a half before the final 2 episodes of season 4, and then it's going to be at least a year before season 5, which is they've already said is the final season, and they're certainly not started hyping anything up as the next show that they're going to be pushing out, or they're always talking about movies and stuff, but their movie brand is shit.
It's this.
Okay at best.
It's big name actors and directors in very average films, or average to lame, average to bad.
Yeah. Unfortunately so. Disappointing. A waste of talent. A waste of an idea.
It looked good though. It looks good. It's pretty.
Joseph Kosinski is kind of like Zack Snyder, where he knows how to make a film look pretty. Doesn't know how to actually direct actors and doesn't know how to control a story. But it looks pretty.
Speaking of pretty, I think it's time for the Trek Respective.
The Trek Respective.
2 very attractive people.
Well,
let me just tee that up.
Bones, Kirk, everyone's in there, so they're all pretty.
All the attractive people.
We got it.
And greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 3 of the Trek Respective, where I torture her, Michelle, with one of the classic Trek films. Well, a classic for now. We're going to move into the new ones later. This is the 3rd film we've watched. It's obviously episode 3. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And I think this is a momentous occasion. And I think you'd be very surprised at what happened this weekend when Michelle sat through this film. This film was made in 1984. It was directed by Leonard Nimoy. It is one of the more well-aligned films in the series. A Metascore of 56, an audience score on IMDb of 6.6. Kramer from Seinfeld felt it was one of the better Trek films, but generally speaking, Wrath of Khan has a better reputation. You didn't like Wrath of Khan terribly much, did you?
No, it felt very campy in a bad way. Like, don't get me wrong, I like a good campy film. I mean, you can't go past Flash Gordon, but yeah, no, I felt This was just moving paint by numbers, moving pieces type of filmmaking.
And you did enjoy the Cats-esque outfits of Khan and his crew, I think, and that was probably the highlight for you.
Well, you're in trouble when I'm talking about the set design and the costumes. So if I'm looking at that or the lighting was interesting. You're in trouble.
So the storyline of this film, Admiral Kirk and his bridge crew risk their careers stealing the decommissioned USS Enterprise to return to a restricted Genesis planet to recover Spock's body. What did you think?
I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's Stockholm syndrome at this point. I don't know whether it's I'm in for 2 now and I am in for another 9 or what. No, wait, is it 13?
13.
Yes, so I'm in for another 10, where I've just kind of gone, well, this is happening. Just submit to the process. But I actually was not bored at any points, and I was emotionally with the film. And I wanted to know what happened.
You were quite
engrossed. I thought they did a decent job.
You were quite engrossed in this one, weren't you?
Yeah, I was like, oh, and it's like, oh, so this is what happens when you get used to your captors. You just give into it. You actually start to kind of enjoy the minutiae of it, the small things.
So
sorry, go.
No, I was going to say, there was no improvement in storytelling. It was just purely, bloody mindedness on your behalf to find something to enjoy.
No, there was that. Look, this is the first time we actually see his decisions catch up with him proper, right? There's way too much exposition in the previous ones. And this is when we actually see the emotional culmination of his recklessness, right? So he's known for being very good, arrogant, and also impulsive almost, or going against orders. So that's sort of like his vibe.
Well, if you remember in the last one, he got around the Kobayashi Maru test.
Exactly. So quite brilliant, compared to his peers and all the rest of it. And so this one, being so reckless cost him his son. And the part I also got to say, maybe it's also the actors getting used to their role and finding the beats, finding the emotion in the lines. So maybe it's just a case of everyone just getting used to each other, getting used to the role. They always took it very seriously, which is, you've got these Shatner feels like he was classically trained, was he?
Don't know.
He exudes that, at least at the way he pronounces words and how he
I think you're starting to enjoy the what we in the Trek community have enjoyed now for years and decades. That is the Shatner way of speaking.
Well, I have been walking around the house going, well, the cats seem to have moved from the bed. I wonder if I'll find them. So I have...
Michelle's log, date, star date, 2542.
Oh,
the cats are not eating their food again.
I've just done Captain's log for the whole week.
You can't take it seriously when they say Captain's log, by the way. She bursts into laughter every time there's someone says Captain's log.
Because it's a reason. I have a hernia. It hurts. Nobody listens.
It's just been taken the piss out of far too many times. Shatner does have a particular way of speaking, and I think we all enjoy that.
They do gruesome animal life quite well.
You enjoyed the monsters?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I don't usually go for that. That's usually not my thing, but I was sufficiently grossed out by them.
Maybe I shouldn't call them monsters. They're life forms.
The other thing I liked was the growing Spock, every 7 minutes growth spurt Spock, which reminded me of V, where Elizabeth, the daughter of Robin, the one who had sex with one of the aliens, gets pregnant and has twins, and one's a little alien baby and the other one's a human baby, but the human baby goes through a reptilian growth spurt when she's like 7 years old, and all of a sudden goes from being 7 to a fully adult woman. And I used to be obsessed with that when I was a kid. Love that. So I kind of saw, it's interesting. That's the other thing I was thinking about this week. Two things. One, the ideas permeating in culture at the time. You kind of have one sci-fi doing this, and then I don't know if it's not necessarily people copying each other, but drawing inspiration. And what are the thoughts about how science is probably dealing with other animals and other species and what they're bringing into our species. So all of that is probably like fertilizing all these creative ideas as well. So that's an interesting thing of the 80s. And also, if you think about it, you've got maybe there's a line you can draw through sort of Reagan-esque eras and a little bit of anti-immigration, but the other is like us, and we combine for a new species. I don't know, maybe something there worth some sort of small mini thesis. I'm not sure. So I found that interesting. The other thing I found really interesting was some things of their time. You know, we are of our time. I always think of Dylan Moran's joke. You know, you want to remain contemporary. Well, I'm alive. How contemporary do you want me to be? You know, we are all temporal beings, and so are our cultural artifacts. They're temporal. So I kind of think these Star Trek films are a little glass case of what being explored at the time culturally. And sometimes I can't access it because I didn't access it at the time. So I'm coming to it with today's, you know, thoughts and mores and whatever the hell's going on in the zeitgeist. So I think the first two for me were a little bit jarring. This one I definitely got into more, and I just started thinking about that. And I do watch Young Sheldon, please don't judge me. And I kind of understood how somebody like a boy kid would look at Star Trek and really get that friendship. You know, I'm weird and kind of not popular, but if I've made one friend who's really loyal, that's good enough. So I got a lot out of this film, actually.
Speaking about things in the cultural cycle, I just by the way, V is very contemporary to this. The V series came out a year before this came out, so they are very, very contemporary.
That she transforms the second year though, not in the first.
So yeah, I don't. Yeah, so very much spiritual contemporaries. Speaking of things of their time, you've got no idea. You got to wait and see what's coming in Star Trek 4, because Star Trek 4 is the most of its time Star Trek film ever made.
So what is it, 1986, 1987?
87, I think.
So it's the most 1987 thing that ever 1987.
Or well, at least from a Trek perspective, it's of its time. But I still think it's enjoyable. So it will be interesting to see if you find it somehow inaccessible because of it being very much of the 80s.
I found the emotional beats of this accessible. There's a line, and you're going to remember it for me, that I went, oh, that's such a good line.
It was like we've spilt our best blood or something like that.
We've paid the price.
Blood kind of thing. The next, I think the next one's actually enjoyable in an 80s kind of way. It's kind of like people would go back and watch, you know, I don't know, Mannequin or something, and it's really 80s, and they enjoy that part of it. Interesting casting in this film. We had the great Christopher Lloyd playing the Klingon commander Crude. What did you make of that? Remember, you once you realized who it was, you were a little bit excited.
Oh, he acted his little took us off. Like he actually did a really good job. And he does have presence. He fills the screen. He did his role well. As of course does Shatner and maybe Leonard Nimoy in a more quiet way. But there's a lot to be said of these people who fill the screen, who have presence when they speak, who are good at their craft. So I thought, I've actually never seen him in anything outside of Doc Brown, I have to say. So that was interesting to see him
very
in that role of the villain.
Yeah, but it gets tired not being the kindly old scientist. So apparently the story was he didn't really understand how communicators and stuff worked in the Star Trek universe. So he would just shout at the sky, just things, and they'd be like, no, you've got the communicator. You can't just shout at the sky and beam you up. But
well, look, who hasn't had that problem with technology? I sometimes shout at the sky. People are like, no, you have to actually click on the computer. And I'm like, what?
That's actually a funny storyline. We should steal that, you know, like You had another thought about it. You said again this week about I really don't like the Orville now. It's a complete Star Trek ripoff.
It is completely a Star Trek ripoff, and I'm a little bit less impressed with it. Having said that, I'm very up to date with the Orville, and they are little episodes which allow thought experiments. But what the Orville does, right, which the first two films don't quite do successfully, which I also noticed it in the third film that it did successfully, is that you can't have these big lofty ideas and not tether them to a character's arc and emotionality. Because or else we get lost and it's just a exercising thinking, which you can't sustain. I mean, unless you can do it, even the documentary series does this, it'll tether it to a person and their emotions.
It's not very interesting in a 90-minute, 2-hour film if it's just a bunch of ideas.
This is the thing. As humans, we need to connect to the people or to whatever we see in an empathetic and human way, even if it's in an inanimate object like rocks from
everything all at once.
Yeah, but they're being human, they're being anthropomorphized, which I can't pronounce. But
I think they got the quippiness brought better for you this time. You enjoyed, I think, a lot of the quips.
Yes,
this time, but
I kind of thought Joss Whedon, who shall not be named, who has broken my heart, might have been influenced by the quippiness there, because I see that as a line to Firefly as well.
I would not be surprised if he grew up, as you sort of said, that weird kid who found something he enjoyed in Trek and became that weird, very, very weird and horrible human being adult.
And then he went all to his head.
When you talk about Trek, I always think of it as like Star Wars was about individuals. It's about what Luke Skywalker does. It's about what Obi-Wan and those guys, whereas this is about a crew of people. This is a group. This is an ensemble.
Well, if you think about it, and this is a very interesting point, you have Star Wars struggling at the moment because it can't break free of that dynasty. And perhaps Star Trek and Orville can go where it can go now further because it's not stuck with a dynasty.
Maybe we'll see there.
I was listening to your review of Obi-Wan last week, and I haven't looked at any of it because I have absolutely no appetite for any more Star Wars offerings from Disney. I've done my time. I've done 9 films. I'm out. Having said that, we disagree thoroughly on the last 3 films in which that 8th one I particularly loved.
Maybe that will be a post-series. We've had some discussions. If people like the Trek perspective, we might take it in a new direction. After these 13 films, we've had some ideas about where they might go. Maybe the Star Wars series will be a logical extension. But we've been naughty the last few weeks, and we've gone well over time. We said we kind of keep it under 5 minutes. That's obviously impossible. It's far too interesting. Talking to Michelle to keep it under 5 minutes. Keeping it under an hour is challenging. So I get to cut to the point and go, how many lockdowns we gave? The last one a 5 out of 5. The first one was a 3 out of 10. So 5 out of 10, 3 out of 10. What's Star Trek 3 Research Spock with you?
I'm vacillating between a 6 and a 7 out of. I'm vacillating between. So we did it the opposite way, didn't we?
You can just go the simple way this time. It's probably overly confusing.
No, I like being overly confusing. That's my deal.
That's the thing. That's all I've got. That and my sweet.
That's all I've got, and my sweet style. So I'm tempted to give it. I'm torn between 3 and 4 out of 10 lockdowns. Because
should we go 3.5?
3.5. Let's go 3.
In the middle. So we'll go 6.5 out of 10.
Because I still have a reticence with Star Trek. And the reticence is this didn't call to me at all in all my time on this planet. It hasn't called to me at all. And so it's only been a movement by the trickery of fate that I find myself in this position. So
you'll be richer for it at the end.
Yeah.
So thank you, Michelle, for enduring another one of these. If you want to find out about what the palate cleanser was, stay around on the podcast. We'll be talking about it soon. And my lordy, unfortunately, it wasn't Rocky 4. We couldn't get that done. But the palate cleanser du jour, as it was yeah, it was something.
Something else of its time.
Something else of its time, and it was a whole thing. So stick around for that. Thank you, Michelle. We'll be back next week with episode 4 of a Trek Retrospective to talk about Star Trek 4. I didn't forget what the subtitle of that one is, The Search for Peace or some bullshit. I can't remember. But that one will be very interesting because that's a very, very different kind of Star Trek film. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Have a lovely night.
Back to you, Spearsy.
There we go. The Trek Retrospective, episode 3 in the can.
Apologies again. I am trying to keep them shorter. I will work at it. I'll work on it some more.
It's okay. We pride ourselves on staying on target.
now we did you and I were chatting in there that while we were talking, but unfortunately Michelle has not had an opportunity to see Christopher Lloyd in Clue. Or more importantly, Suburban Commando starring Hulk Hogan, but you won't hold that against it.
Disappointing, but because we haven't had an audience recommendation for a little while, I'm putting the recommendation that if we can, it's not a must, if we can, watch Clue.
Depends on how easy it is to find. In the meantime, did you, because we did talk about it a little bit in the Trek Perspective, you watched the final episode of Obi-Wan, I think.
I have, yes. And it is the event finale, as it says on Disney Plus, for the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, without going into spoilers, because it's still the same 7 hours or something since released or whatever, I won't talk about spoilers. What I will talk about is general themes and thoughts on the series itself.
So you've watched all of them now, yes?
I have seen all of them, yes. 1, it is always a delight having Ewan McGregor on my screen. He is a wonderful actor. He was pretty much the saving grace for every single one of the trilogy movies that he was part of. And I want to see him in more stuff. I do not want to see him in any more of the Harley Quinn movies if they do any more, because
he was killed off, so it's probably not going to happen.
That is no guarantee, and that is one of the things that watching Obi-Wan Kenobi will also attest to.
Touche.
If you are a Jedi, if you get stabbed once, you will die. If you are anybody else, stabbed once, you'll be fine. He won't even have bandages on. Silly Jedi. What a weird Achilles heel for a Jedi. Like the Jedi must never do sewing, because that would be the most dangerous thing. It's like, oh shit, But Obi-Wan Kenobi takes place in a point of nebulous nothingness. 10 years after the end of Revenge of the Sith, we've got, as we talked about, both of us find young Leia the most annoying child actor since Jake Lloyd. And it is following the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi essentially being pulled out of self-imposed exile, where he is uncomfortably watching a young Luke Skywalker grow and has a very combative relationship, shall we say, with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. And Leia gets kidnapped, and then hijinks ensue as Obi-Wan Kenobi tries to save her. And of course, in that story, he is a man that is haunted by what he had to do to his brother, his friend, his Padawan, Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. And that story comes back to haunt him in all the ways that Disney love to do, in a way of promoting and self-promoting. It's like, oh yes, we're bringing Hayden Christensen back. We've got James Earl Jones doing the voice. We've got the classic stuff. It's going to be emotional storytelling. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to be huge. It really wasn't. This is a story that telegraphed every potential punch that it might have had far too soon. I mean, come on. The opening for the whole series was the attack on the Jedi Temple, where you see kids running a Jedi younglings, as they still choose to refer to them as, running around trying to survive Order 66. And particularly, they see Anakin Skywalker going in there and slashing down kids. That's not going to have anything to do with any of the new Force-sensitive characters that we see on the screen in this show at all. No. It's something that is so painfully obvious, I didn't need to use my superpower. And it ends up becoming this weird, stupid thing in the finale. That kind of theme is brought up again, and it's used as they're trying to use it as this big emotional thing. It's like, wait, what? Why is this character even doing that at this point? Because we've just at the end of episode 5, we were just told that they were doing something else, which was actually kind of an interesting story, but they completely underdeveloped it throughout the whole thing. So it came out of nowhere. And if they had actually nurtured that as the story, and instead of having an Obi-Wan Kenobi story, have this character as the main focus and just have the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi pop in every now and then, it would have been a far more interesting story because of what their plan was and what their intention was. But then in episode 5, it's all just shit. And it sums it up perfectly, because this story has nothing on the line. We know exactly how everything's going to end up. The Grand High Inquisitor, who's this pale-faced guy who's first introduced and he's a really scary character in the Clone Wars stories, or Star Wars Rebels, I think it is. And Star Wars Rebels is set after the events of the Obi-Wan Kenobi story. So it's like, all right, well, he got stabbed. So yeah, he's going to survive. And he's a bad guy. So yes, one stab doesn't kill him. We already know that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader both survive any potential fights that they have. So there's no genuine threat of danger to either of them in that regard. We know that Leia is going to survive because it's Leia. We know that Luke is going to survive. We know that Owen and Beru are going to survive because they die later on. There is nothing at stake here. And so this show amounts to a zero sum. And it's not even I've talked about the production value of it. It looks quite good. But again, this is another Disney-owned property that in the last episode, it's all about bright lights and a lightsaber fight in the dark between characters. And it's like, okay.
Was there a sky beam?
No, there's no sky beam.
Disappointed.
There is no sky beam. But it's just full. It's a waste of nothing. And just a waste of time, because like I say, there is nothing at all in this show that is new that we do not already know the outcome of. So there is no emotional investment in any of the characters. It is pure, hey, we want to just revisit that because there is this growing groundswell for the love of the prequel trilogy, and we want to do something to serve them. No, and I've been talking to people at work about this. And what is the opening couple of words of the title crawl of Star Wars movies, Travis?
It's been a while, right? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's a galaxy. That is not a small thing, a galaxy. And we have seen multiple galaxies in the Star Wars universe. But apparently in this one, the only stories that matter are the ones that are still highly connected to the Skywalker saga. No. Just no. There are a googolplex of people and characters and potentials that you could go out there and do. And why is every single fucking one of them? Why is the bad guy always human? The good guy always human? There are so many other interesting fucking races. Do something different. Tell a compelling fucking story. Tell a story that actually has value and reason to fucking watch it. There is nothing. This is empty calories of TV. It's not even like eating a bag of chips. It's like, oh, at least it tastes like fake cheese that has mild association in my brain with something. This tastes like nothing. And
the reason they do it is there's no risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the fanboys just keep eating it up and they do not demand anything better. I have friends tonight who posted photos of themselves on Facebook crying over the last episode.
In a good way?
Wow. Legit. So
I'll tell you something. I want to, if they're getting emotional about this, I would love to be in a relationship with them because I could take them on an emotional roller coaster with no fucking effort.
I think I'm not sure that's the right idea here about either relationships or anything. It's not how any of this works. But, I will say this friend of mine is kind of become my own personal Kevin Smith, who just loves everything. Right? Anything remotely geeky in a fandom he likes. He just loves all of it. You're like, you realize when you love everything, your recommendation means nothing.
Yeah.
By the same rationale, the fact I hate everything probably makes it just as bad.
But at least when you say something that you do like, it's like, oh, okay. Whereas if you say something was shit, you still can't really trust it if everything is always great. It's like, okay, well, you like trash. So if you don't like it, it probably means it's actually kind of good.
Well, that's been kind of my thing. Is I think he's lost his credibility. But people who are posting, I haven't seen it. I won't be watching it because I watched the first few episodes and that was enough. So
it doesn't set itself up well in the early parts of the season, and this is supposed to be like an event thing, and it wastes so much time with long, slow considerations and pauses. You know what? It actually reminded me of production-wise. The Eternals.
Right, kind of lumbering and slow.
100%. And then there's a cameo right at the end that people have been kind of saying, "Oh my god, I hope that happens because it really should." And we heard their voice in other things and blah 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 blah. And like, yeah, it happens, and it does nothing. It again, just like the rest of the whole fucking series, it is a nil sum of nothing. Especially when you weigh it against what happens in the original trilogy of for Luke Skywalker and his development and how quickly he gets Jedi powers and things like that. Like, really? Okay. You're not actually painting your Jedi masters in a good light here when things are picked up so much quicker by people who have had no fucking training.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a no from you.
This is a big fucking no. I was not expecting much for this, and somehow it disappointed me. So yeah,
harsh but fair. So I'm glad to see I didn't miss very much in choosing not to continue with Kenobi, and it's quite a disappointment. Interesting, there's an article, and I think in the Guardian today going, we need less Ewan McGregor in Kenobi. I'm like, less Ewan McGregor in Kenobi. I'm like, he's the only good thing about it for the first 2 episodes I saw. But
this show needed to be about anyone else, but it just so happens that Kenobi pops in. Anyone else's point of view, and it would have suddenly been a little bit more interesting. Now, while I am on the kicking the boots into Disney, do you mind if I quickly talk about the new Ms. Marvel episode?
By all means.
So, I talked about in the first episode where it was very much kind of taking on a lot of the ideas of kind of Edgar Wright style storytelling and John Watts from Spider-Man Homecoming's directorial style, and how it was all about introducing us to Kamala Khan. Episode 2 came out, and the same things really applied. They started to actually do things, and we actually started to get a little bit of mild threat. And then we just had today episode 3 come out, and we've probably now met the main bad guys, and give them something. It's, you know how quite often in particularly Marvel movies, but in a lot of superhero movies, when we meet that character that is going to become the bad guy, and they play it sort of like, oh, they're going to be the friend first, and then it's going to be the turn. So there's emotional connection between the hero and the villain, and it's sort of like, you were my brother, Anakin, blah, 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 blah. They turn on a fucking dime in episode 3. We have this like, oh, isn't it nice? We finally caught up with you for the first time ever, and already, as soon as someone says that, it's like, I've been looking for you for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, as a public health warning, if anyone ever says that to you, have red flags and alarms going off in your bell, because they're probably not doing anything good. They've probably not been doing it for altruistic reasons, and that's exactly what happens here. And we get a very rushed confrontation between Kamala and the bad guys, and there's they flirt. Disney flirts a little bit with racial profiling.
Ooh.
Yeah, because Damage Control, which is a separate arm of the US government that deals with the immersion and continuing problem of superpowered individuals in America, and they are the ones who come in and deal with. We saw things like in Spider-Man Homecoming, where Michael Keaton's character is kind of doing all the cleanup from the battle in New York, and then those people come in and just kind of wash over his things. We get some of that here, and there is that momentary interesting element where this Damage Control go to mosque, because they have worked out, impressively considering, they've worked out that this new emerging superhero, potentially from AvengerCon, is possibly Muslim. And so they've been going to mosques and things like that. And they come into a mosque, and one of the characters, one of Kamala's friends, actually stops them and says they need to have a warrant. And she asks the question, are you coming here because you think that we are helping them, or are you coming here because we're a mosque? And it's like, oh, okay. They actually addressed that little bit of stereotypical profiling of, oh, is a terrorist, comes from a mosque, and all of that horrible tarring with the same brush kind of thing that goes on. But then it's kind of very quickly just like, yeah, we did it. We ticked that box, now move on with other things. So it's going to be interesting to see if that comes back at all as a growing or persistent theme for the show. But right now,
balls that you don't usually associate with Disney.
Exactly. So kudos to them for actually addressing it, even cursorily. But I don't think that they're going to really come back to it in any major way. It is overall getting better, but it's still a mess of a narrative. I still don't actually know what the hell her power is. There's repeated connections to Jinn, and anyone who wants to learn more can research that. I won't go into it in detail in case you want to stay spoiler free.
I enjoyed Jinn.
Yeah. Birthday present. Spice treat.
Lucky boy. Save some for me.
I will. This will definitely be shared, not just consumed by myself. The next time you see me, I'll just be going dead and pickled. So yeah, it's getting better, but it's just such a mess of a story, and I don't know whether it's intentional, because the character of Kamala Khan kind of comes across as a little bit ADHD, And I don't know if they're just trying to keep you in her head. They're not doing a good job of that, if they are. And if they are doing that, I think it's pushing a little bit too far for a Disney Marvel show when they've got far more other interesting, compelling things that they could be pushing. For example, explaining who their superhero is.
It is the lowest. The story has come out. It is the lowest viewed of the
Mhm.
Marvel Disney TV shows.
Mhm.
Some people are saying it's because it's up against Kenobi. Other people, it's just fatigue. Who
Mhm.
knows? But a lot of people seem to say it's a reasonably good show.
I mean, production-wise, they actually invest in real locations, which they haven't used in a Star Wars movie for a very long time. And it's nice to actually go, oh yeah, this is, I think it's set in New Jersey, and it's actually kind of nice. Like, again, I keep going back to Spider-Man because it's, they're all based in the same kind of multi-city city. It's nice that you can actually see life on the streets. And what is nice about this is the fact that it is really investing and celebrating Pakistani culture in New York. And it's interesting, and it's a compelling side of society that we don't often get a chance to see, particularly through this medium of superhero and popcorn. It's nice because most of the time, if someone does dare to make a movie about any kind of Muslim culture background, whether they're from Pakistan or anywhere else, it's usually a more somber kind of fare, just trying to take a serious, genuine look at it.
Or they're the bad guy.
Yeah, and it's it's nice to actually have so much brightness with the colors and things, because there's a wedding and it's all about color and life. And there's in episode 2 there's a celebration of Eid, and so it's really nice to see this just joy in that society being presented. So it is a really refreshing take. They're not folding it into the story well, though, so it just seems like these weird pops in the story that are more interesting than the story. So it's going to be interesting to see how they wrap it all up, but I'm fast losing interest because, much like a lot of Batman movies, they're kind of forgetting about the main character and going on about everything else around. Like,
Could we have a bit more about the title character, please?
Yeah. So more of Miss Marvel, less of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'll be happy.
Well, I'm going to bring the tone down now.
Yeah. Okay.
You've been talking hopeful things. You've been talking, almost a bit of a pat in the back for Disney there, saying, you haven't quite nailed it, but you're doing good. You're trying different things, is what I'm hearing here. And we encourage different things. But
yes.
So, the palate cleanser on Saturday night after Star Trek 3. So, Michelle gets to pick herself a palate cleanser. As people last week noted, as I talked about earlier, it was supposed to be Rocky 4. Didn't get to happen because of the reasons I outlined earlier. Fuck you, Prime. So after a bit of trial and error and a bit of back and forth about what it should be this week, we landed on Sex and the City 2008. The film version, not the TV show. Now, I have seen a little bit of a TV show in the past. Years ago, my ex-wife was a fan, and after she kind of got me across the line on the Gilmore Girls, that's a good show, by the way. Sex and the City. Well, we'll try a couple episodes of Sex and the City. It's very highly rated. Like, people say it's very good. And you know what? I didn't think the TV show was terrible. The writing was actually pretty good when you compare it to a lot of its contemporaries. It's like when I think I've talked to you about it before. When you first saw Spice Girls, you're like, ugh, God, that's awful. Until you saw the Spice Girls knockoffs that followed them, and you're like, actually, they did that kind of thing that they were doing pretty well compared to the dreck that came afterwards. Same sort of thing with Sex and the City. All the knockoff shows that came after it, the writing wasn't half as clever or as good as the TV show. They were ripping off a TV version of Sex and the City. So I was vaguely aware of who the characters were, vaguely aware of the nature of their relationships. And I was in a little bit of a position like Michelle is with Star Trek in the sense that she doesn't fully appreciate the relationships between the characters in a depth that a Trekkie would, having watched that show for years. Yeah, I know who Samantha and the other ones are.
Sure you do.
Kim Cattrall, like she was in a Trek film, so like Carrie, and like she's the overly sexed one, and yada yada yada. But like, I didn't truly understand the minutiae or the detail of their relationships together. And I think what this film's trying to be, I think, is a really a deep dive, an exploration, a celebration of female friendship of women into their 40s, I guess. They're in their 40s, late 30s, early 40s in this show. And I think it's not just women. Like, I think it's a thing you decide when you get to about our age where it's actually really hard to stay friends with people. Like, people get married, they have kids, they move away, they get jobs, they get arrested, they join QAnon. It's just, I've heard, it's hard to stay in touch with people. So it is actually a nice story about a bunch of, and it's probably even harder for women, I guess. But like they're actually chosen, worked hard, and they choose to stay close with each other and remain this friendship. That's a good thing I can say about this film. This film is 2 hours and 25 minutes. Like, people know my thoughts on films that are too long. It's a regular criticism of stuff that I like watching, let alone something that's not really up my alley or designed for me. It's obviously I'm not their target audience, but I was just flabbergasted that this film was 2 hours and 25 minutes. This is 155. It's just what? Like I was gobsmacked. Like for this film, 2.5 hours long. Like,
and this continues on from the TV show, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So
it's all the same stars. I mean, we have obviously Sarah Jessica Parker as Carrie, Kim Cattrall as Samantha, Cynthia Nixon as Miranda, Kristen Davis as Charlotte. Important other character being Chris Noth. He shall not be named as Mr. Big. It is from the TV show. I don't understand why would you make this film that long? And here's the shocking part for me. It takes 40 minutes before the story starts. Like, there is no story. There is no story in the first 40 minutes. It is just interaction between the characters, like banter.
Okay.
Like the actual core story of this film, it starts after 40 minutes. So maybe you can pull that shit off on TV. I don't think it makes great cinema. You can just have characters bantering off at each other, and but generally speaking, if you're going to tell a 2.5 hour film, you need a story. It's a little bit like when we talked about the Batman that came out. Like, if you're going to, was it 3 hours, the Batman? If you've got a 3 hour Batman film, your story must be fucking incredible. Mind-bogglingly awesome, which it wasn't. It was just purely self-indulgence that film to be 3 hours. This is, God, like that film, this film makes the Batman look like, a Spartan, student film in terms of self-indulgence. Like, it's just, Michael Patrick King is the writer and director. I wasn't familiar with. I know Candace Bushnell wrote the book, but I don't believe she has anything to do with the films of a TV show. And Michael Patrick King is basically best known for his Sex and the City work. He did Two Broke Girls as well. So, he's not exactly, Alfred Hitchcock over here. But this is just jerking off over the fact that the fans of a show will watch whatever he serves them, whatever slop he serves them. This is what you'll watch it. And it's actually insulting to his audience, I think. So there's my first major complaint. If you're going to tell us, you've got to get cracking with your story. It must be an interesting story. It is not an interesting story. Essentially, we'll pick up the characters. They're meandering through life as they do, having lunch together, having amazing, rich lives. The essential, I guess, the drama of a story comes from Mr. Big at one point proposes to Carrie. The
Okay.
reason he proposes is he has bought Carrie an apartment, very, very, very nice apartment. And, she's selling her apartment and she's worried that she's becoming too dependent on him and that she's sort of losing herself in the process, and she's leaving herself open to, being left high and dry if they should ever split up. And, she's given up all these things and she doesn't actually have an interest in, the property she lives in. She's living at his largesse, at his pleasure, which is fair. It's not a terrible angle for your story to take about women. It happens. So his interpretation of her concern about that is, why don't we get married? In a very unromantic sort of proposal. They agree. Even the wedding becomes bigger than Ben-Hur. I'm sorry, is it okay to give spoilers about a 14-year-old film? I think it is.
Oh, no, I was so desperate to watch this movie, Trav. Please don't spoil it for me.
He jilts her at the altar because he gets I don't know, cold feet or something, mainly because, and this is a criticism of the character, Carrie Bradshaw is a horrible human being. Selfish. That was what I needed. But my doctor says I can't keep drinking like that. So, and I blame those horrible films we watched years ago. Carrie does not at any point seem to check in with her fiance. What kind of wedding would you like? She just creates this bigger than Ben-Hur because she sort of is. She's a writer in the show. Michelle makes quite an astute observation that she has a hell of a life for a writer. He has, incredible clothes, amazing apartment, incredible income,
us writers live in
right. It's what you live in this lap of luxury. I've seen it, so I was like, isn't it different? Like in the early 2000s, did people who wrote for like the New York Times and stuff, did they make proper money?
Missed the window.
I don't know, but apparently not. So apparently it's bullshit either way. But she's a very selfish character, and because this wedding's become bigger than Ben-Hur, that is essentially what gives Mr. Big Christoph cold feet. But that's kind of poorly explained. But it is kind of actually probably one of the most effective scenes in the film is where she realizes that she's been jilted at the altar, and you do actually kind of feel something of the humiliation and just anguish she feels. And my favorite scene is him catching up with her in the street as she drives away from the now cancelled wedding, and her beating him over the head with her bouquet. It's, at least a useful purpose for a bouquet. And that's basically the story. That's basically it. She gets jilted at the altar by Mr. Big, and they look after her. Her friends look after her. And she starts to feel better about herself because she's pretty down. They take her to a gorgeous resort in Mexico, and Kristen Davis shits her pants because she won't eat Mexican food, and she eats American pudding, and she brings home food. Like, it's actually incredibly racist, Oh, I couldn't eat the food here. It's Mexico.
Okay.
Oh dear. And I guess she brings this pudding with it from the United States to eat in Mexico because she doesn't trust the food. And the joke is, she goes, "Look, it's made in Poughkeepsie." Poughkeepsie, and she shits her pants. Poughkeepsie poo. It's a poo joke.
This last week, I've been telling a lot of dad pun jokes to friends, and they have always just responded with that kind of typical sigh emoji. And that one I just suddenly realized what pain I've been delivering to them.
So I actually found this film distasteful. Like, that might sound strange to people, it might sound pretentious, but like, this is a living, breathing catalog. Like, entire segments of this film are just them shouting essentially brand names at the screen. Okay, obviously we're not just sitting there standing going, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Like, they're not doing that, but it's basically, you remember that scene in Fight Club where Edward Norton's walking through his apartment and it's got all the things saying, like walking through an IKEA catalog?
Yeah.
That's what this film is like. Oh, look, it's your Louis Vuitton bag. Oh, my God, I hired this bag. It's my Louis Vuitton bag, and I've got it until Thursday, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, I've got you a real Louis Vuitton bag. And, oh, my God, it's a Vivienne Westwood dress, and blah, blah, blah. And it's Mahalo Balanic shoes, which that's quite a significant character thing and note or story beat in the film is she gets this pair of shoes and people are going to be laughing their heads off because I can't pronounce the brand name. It was something along the lines of Manolo Balanic shoes. I would have absolutely before Saturday night, if you told me Manolo Balanic was the bad guy in the new season of Star Trek Discovery, I would have gone, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But no, it's a brand of shoe. Very, very, very expensive shoes. And they're largely horrible. At least they look horrible to me.
Well, let's face it, you just don't have the ankles for them anymore.
It's a tragedy.
That hiking accident just caused you so many woeful fashion problems.
It was that getting out of Greece just continues by breaking my ankle, just continues to cost me. And the thing, I guess the side that made me most cringe the most in this film was there's a scene where Mr. Big has bought her a new apartment. It's gorgeous, it's huge, it's Manhattan, it's worth millions of dollars. And she complains that the closet's not big enough. The closet is not big enough. And I mean, there are situations where that would be a valid complaint. I'm renting a new house. This house literally doesn't have closets. I kind of, you need to put your clothes somewhere. But she's just been gifted basically this gigantic apartment and she's complaining about the closet. And there's a scene later on where he basically goes, I have to build you a new one. And he shows her the new closet he's built. And it's bigger than most people's apartments in New York in their closet. And it's that big. And it's supposed to be like this amazing moment, I guess, for people to go, oh my God, I wish I had a closet like that. And I can't say there are probably people out there who don't wish they had a closet like that. But for me, I was just like, oh God, you're disgusting. This is disgusting. This is a show about fucking massively privileged, rich, bored, white women in New York who do nothing of substance and have nothing of substance to say.
Hedonism.
You probably kind of, it's basically wish fulfillment for people who enjoy fashion, I guess. I mean, look, and I'm not saying you're not allowed to enjoy this because you can enjoy whatever you want. I enjoy horrible, terrible things. I literally looked up on YouTube a 25-year-old British reality TV show to watch while I was eating dinner tonight. That's how I have my guilty pleasures. Trust me. But this is just repugnant. This is awful. And the thing is, I don't think fans like this much either. I mean, in fairness, it was Michelle's palate cleanser. I think she likes this film.
It had a $65 million budget, box office, $418 million.
It made a lot of money. I'm just gracing this off the fact that IMDb has a 5.6 user rating and a 53 Metascore. So I don't know. Look, obviously there might be people voting for this on here who aren't the kind of people who would normally enjoy a Sex and the City film, and that's fine. That would be people like me. But there's comments like the top user review, a disappointed longtime fan of a series. I guarantee people went and saw it. Like if people love the TV show, would have definitely gone and seen it, but I don't know that a lot of them liked it. I'm just basing this off the evidence in front of me. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's a bit like any TV show that sort of makes its way onto the big screen. You're probably going to go and see it. But as I was thinking, 50 Shades of Grey. Not a TV show, but obviously the book sold a squillion copies. And then it made its way to the big screen. And I don't think I've heard many people say good things about the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's eviscerated enough. But that was last week's palate cleanser. And my God, that was one of the longest 2.5 hours I've ever had. Like a film like this should be 90 minutes in and out.
So yeah, that's that's hard.
We're running a little long, so
what? You need to increase your hatred towards the streaming services because if it had been Rocky IV, that's just a sweet 1 hour 31 minutes.
The guys who made Rocky knew what they were doing. I was boggled. Like there's no story. There is probably 25, 30 minutes of actual story in that film. and add the bantering that people seem to enjoy. Like it'd be almost like a Seinfeld movie where like an hour of it was just them sitting at Tom's diner and going, what is it here with salsa? The fans would probably be okay with that, but like you do need a little bit of something to drive a story along, and I didn't think that was really there.
Fair enough.
But I'm going to keep moving and move on to something actually good, though.
Yes,
before
please.
we finish up for tonight, unless you've got anything else. But like,
I'm good.
A few weeks ago, we had someone pop on into the chat and recommend to us The Offer, a show I had never heard of. So if you're listening to the audio version or you're rewatching the video later on, try to remember to jump on in and watch us on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook at 7:30 Australian Eastern Time, and you can offer a suggestion as well, because we will take suggestions.
Yes.
We were suggested The Offer. The Offer is Oscar-winning producer Albert S. Ruddy's never-before-revealed experiences of making The Godfather. So basically, this is a limited series telling the story of how they made The Godfather. And this is fucking brilliant. I cannot tell you how fucking good this is. It's so good. I binged like 3 episodes on Monday night alone. And the only reason I stopped is I had to get up and do stuff in the morning. It's so good. The cast is top-notch. We're back with Miles Teller again. He's getting around at the moment. He plays Albert S. Ruddy, who is the producer of The Godfather. Matthew Good plays Robert Evans. If you don't know Matthew Good, if I'm not mistaken, he plays Ozymandias in the Schneider version of The Watchmen, the much maligned, unfairly maligned Snyder Watchmen film. And he was good in that film, but I don't think I've seen him pop up in anything else since.
He was in a Chan-wook Park movie as well that was actually surprisingly good. I can't remember the name of it though. But for those people who don't know, Robert Evans, very interesting producer, and he was the book that I accidentally stole off of my co-host called The Kid Stays in the Picture.
And there's actually a fantastic documentary of the same name. And that's made me want to go back and watch that again. Because he is Robert Evans. That's the only reason I can say that is because Robert Evans made that documentary about himself. So you do get a pretty good idea of who you're talking about. He is Robert Evans, and it's so interesting. He's so good in this. Colin Hanks is Barry Lapudis, who is sort of a corporate lackey for Gulf and Western, which owns Paramount. Paramount being the production company making The Godfather. Giovanni Ribisi playing Joe Colombo, who is a gangster who is initially opposed to the creation of The Godfather and trying to prevent it from being made. Juno Temple is killing it as Betty McCart, who is Albert's assistant. Other names in here you might know. The great Lou Ferrigno is in here in a great role. And
is he Dan Fogler? Is Francis Ford Coppola?
Dan Fogler is pretty good. Anthony Ippolito playing Al Pacino is really, really pulls it off well. Patrick Gallo is fantastic as Mario Puzo, the writer of the book. I can't tell you. If you're a fan of making movies, you're going to love this. If you're a fan of The Godfather, you're going to love this. If you're just a fan of a really fucking good story, really well told, you're going to love this. It looks amazing. The people in it who are playing the characters that you've heard of look and sound a lot like those characters. I've heard bits and pieces over the years about the story of how The Godfather was made, but this really squares with those stories that I've heard of, and it all feels legit. And I think it all is legit, but it doesn't feel like stuff's happening because a story needs it to happen. It feels like stuff that happened because that's what happened. So despite the fact that The Godfather was a massive bestseller hit, it was not popular amongst Italian Americans. And the mob in particular was not a fan of it. And the mob in particular wanted to go out of their way to make sure it didn't get made. And they were pulling whatever strings they could. Frank Sinatra wasn't a fan of the book. He was a character in there he thought was based on him, and it wasn't a good character. And I'm only up to episode 3.
Is the whole
everybody's
season
doing it
yet?
I believe it is. It is available on Paramount Plus. It's a mountain of entertainment, don't you know? And I know I do stick the boots into Paramount a little bit, but like this Yellow Jackets, if you like Trek, Strange New Worlds is on there as well. That's something. That's something. That's worth a 7-day free trial, I think, in Beanie City. look, I've only got much time to talk about it, but like I can't remember the viewer who recommended it to us, but thank you. This would be probably in my top 3 shows of the year so far. It's that good. It's so enjoyable. It's like the episodes are about 50 minutes an hour, and they just go like that because they're so entertaining and they're so engrossing. And it's just because obviously it's a little bit like Kenobi in a way, in a sense, like what happens at the end of Kenobi, right? We all saw Star Wars. We know what happens at the end of the series, though, right? Like, I mean, we all know what The Godfather is. We know it
didn't go anywhere.
We know it's a massive hit. We know they get Brando to do it, and it's arguably the greatest film ever made. It's in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no actual, in a way, it doesn't feel like there should be anything at stake here because, like, it all gets made.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. If the show makes you forget that, it suspends your disbelief so beautifully. You forget what you know, and you just go, don't care. I'm just going to enjoy the ride, which probably what Kenobi should have done, right?
Mm-hmm.
He survives, but hey, we're going to give you a cracking story, and you're just going to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
About how he survives until Star Wars, but they've obviously chosen to go a different direction.
Yeah.
So amazing cast. Some of the directors here are actually really quite impressive. Some of the episodes. I just had a quick look at the episode. I just quickly noted I was watching one of them, and the director was Dexter Fletcher. So I think there's a few episodes, not all of them, are directed by Dexter. I'm just going to have a quick look here. If you don't know who Dexter, he doesn't direct all of them, but some of the episodes are directed by Dexter Fletcher, who, of course, best known for his role in Press Club. But of course, he's also a director of an Academy Award-winning picture, if I'm not mistaken. He directed Bohemian Rhapsody, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, he directed Rocket Man and then came in and salvaged Bohemian Rhapsody.
I think he's credited as a director, though, right? As opposed to Bryan Singer, who kind of got that go away, don't come back. I could be wrong. No, he's not credited. So I thought he did. Anyway, so he worked on
Bohemian Rhapsody and repaired it.
Whether or not, how much, I guess maybe it's one of those Directors Guild things, but like he is a big time director. And he does a fantastic job with a few episodes he's given here. But it looks great as well. The periods detail is very nicely done. The little references to stuff. They got lots of movie stars like Steve McQueen, Robert Redford, Ali McGraw. All the actors they've got look the part.
Very nice.
This is just so in my wheelhouse. I love stories about film. I loved the kid stays in the picture. I thought it was a great documentary.
Yeah.
This film makes me want to go back and watch that again. Makes me want to go back and watch The Godfather again.
Fantastic. That's what a show like this should do. It stands on its own, but it inspires you to go and learn more about the people involved and more about the project that it is based on. So I'm glad that one of us got to see some good stuff this week.
Well, look, I mean, hopefully you find hopefully you manage to access, you maybe give it a free trial or something of that nature to take a look at this when it's well, I think, as I said, I think all 10 episodes are out. So if next time you have some leave, I think they just finished last week airing on Paramount Plus. So if you have some time off, if you've got the Rona and you've got to spend a week at home, there are so many. Like, honestly, forget about Miss Marvel, forget about Kenobi. This is something that's really original, and I think I would pick it every time over something like that.
Fantastic, it's great stuff. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode of Armchair Producers. I can already tell you a couple of things that I'm going to be talking about next week. First up, Umbrella Academy Season 3 just dropped today. I started watching the first episode, and it is already one of just a joy to watch because it embraces the weird and the stupid and the comedy, and the actors really know their parts. I'm looking forward to it. I'm finally actually going to get around. On Friday, I am going to go and watch Men at the cinema. So I'm looking forward to that. And I finished re-listening to Neil Gaiman's book, American Gods, which I think I've talked about way back when I first read it. was one of the very few Neil Gaiman books I didn't like. And I now, having listened to it again, and I'm going back and rewatching the series, I have a clearer understanding of why. And I will go into that more next week. Of course, we talked about Blowout this week, and we are going to be watching Broken Arrow next week because we're nothing but classy on this show. We talked about the disappointing Spiderhead on Netflix, which I keep forgetting that I actually watched.
That's how good it was.
Yeah, that's how good it is. Kenobi has come to an end, so I won't have to talk about that anymore. Miss Marvel is still trudging along, doing a little better. We had The Offer, Sex and the City, and of course, the star of the show, the Trek Perspective, talking about the search for Spock. Next week, they will be talking about the quest for peace.
I don't know. What is Star Trek 4's tagline? Like, it's
the journey home?
The voyage home. The quest for peace is Superman 4. I'd love to see that mashup, but no.
Just one moment. So like Mr. Sulu is there. He's like, Captain, there's something. Oh, it's just gone past us. And you just see Superman.
It's nuclear man.
Afternoon, I'm on my way to Krypton.
Star Trek for the voyage home.
Star Trek for the voyage for Superman.
And we hopefully should have Rocky 4 this week for us.
Fingers crossed, because that is the white whale, the unicorn of cinema in this modern age of 91 minutes.
just merciful.
It doesn't happen anymore, and I miss it so much every day. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, you can follow us on twitch.tv/thefrybane, as it's showing on the bottom of the screen there. Armchair Producers on Facebook, and on the Twitters. I'm at the Fried Brain, at Evil Trav, youtube.com/Armchair Producers. Make sure you pop in, leave comments and things like that. We really do appreciate it. Until next time, good night.